It was supposed to be a simple, friendly interview, the kind every Hollywood star does before a big movie release. Jason Statham arrived at the studio calm, composed, dressed sharp as always, and ready to talk about his new action film. He had done hundreds of interviews before. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he thought. The moment he stepped onto the brightly lit stage, the atmosphere felt different. The studio audience cheered loudly, but the host, famous for his arrogant humor and "I don't care who you are" attitude, welcomed Jason with a crooked smirk stretching across his face. A smirk that hinted trouble. Jason extended a hand politely. The host shook it, but not with respect. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed, the kind of look someone gives when they think they're smarter than you, or when they're planning something. "Jason Statham, ladies and gentlemen," the host shouted dramatically. "The man who looks like he hasn't smiled since 1998. The audience laughed, unsure whether it was funny or rude. Jason smiled lightly, brushing off the comment. He knew these shows loved teasing. But something about the host's tone felt targeted, sharper than usual. "So, Jason," the host continued, "another action movie? Let me guess. You punch guys, you drive fast cars, you talk in that same low voice. Anything new, mate?" He chuckled at his own joke. Jason kept his cool. "Well, that's what people enjoy watching," he replied politely. "I just try to give them a good time." But the host wasn't done. He leaned in, raising an eyebrow. "Tell me honestly, do you ever get tired of playing the tough guy? Or is that just who you are? Because you don't exactly strike me as versatile." The audience murmured. That crossed a line. Jason's jaw tightened for a split second. But he stayed professional. "I do what I love. And I'm proud of it." The host smirked again, sensing he could push more. Cameras zoomed in. The tension was becoming thick enough to feel even through the screen. Nobody in the room knew that this interview would soon explode into a viral moment, and that the person who would change everything wasn't even on stage yet. But he was on his way. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And what he would do next would leave millions stunned. The interview had barely begun, yet the tension in the studio felt like a stretched cable ready to snap at any second. Jason Statham sat tall in his chair, maintaining calm professionalism, but the host's smirk said everything. He was enjoying this, too much. "All right, Jason," the host said, crossing one leg over the other and holding a stack of cue cards he clearly had no intention of reading. "Let's talk about your new movie. Another action flick. Lots of explosions. Lots of punching. Lots of you grunting." The audience chuckled, though more out of discomfort than humor. Jason kept his expression neutral. "Well," Jason replied gently, "people love action films. And I give my heart to every project. It's not just punching, you know. There's a lot of—" The host jumped in, slicing through Jason's sentence. Yes. The heart. The passion. The deep, meaningful lines like, "Let's finish this," or "I've got this." Real Shakespeare stuff. He rolled his eyes dramatically, earning louder laughter this time. Jason paused. He wasn't offended easily. Years of Hollywood press had toughened him, but the disrespect was starting to shine too brightly to ignore. Still, he kept calm. "You know, making action movies isn't as easy as people think," Jason said. "There's dedication, training, stunts." "Oh, training," the host interrupted again, clapping sarcastically. "Tell us, Jason, do you practice your famous angry stare in the mirror every morning? Or is that just natural talent?" The crowd reacted with a mix of gasps and giggles. Jason's jaw moved slightly, but he forced a smile. The host leaned even closer, voice dripping with cockiness. "Come on, mate. It's all the same movie every time. You walk in, beat some guys up, say 3 words, and leave. Isn't that boring?" Jason's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disappointment. "I enjoy what I do. And a lot of people enjoy watching it." The host tilted his head, pretending to think deeply. "Well, maybe. But I'm just wondering how long people will keep watching the same thing, you know? I mean, do you even challenge yourself? Or do you just show up and look mean?" That one stung the audience more than it stung Jason. You could feel the room shift. People whispered softly, sensing the insult was intentional. Jason inhaled slowly. "Every role challenges me," he said with control. "And I give everything I have." But the host wasn't done, not by a long shot. He pulled out a tablet from under his desk. "Speaking of giving everything, let's take a look at a very special clip we prepared. Just watch." Jason raised an eyebrow. The audience leaned forward. The tablet began playing a heavily edited montage of Jason in multiple movies, but all the scenes were cut in a mocking way. The music was clownish. The text read, "Jason Statham's entire acting range: grinning, squinting face, clapping hands." The montage replayed the same three expressions over and over, exaggerated for comedy. Jason angry. Jason serious. Jason slightly angrier. The audience, pressured by the studio environment, laughed, though many looked uncomfortable. Jason stared at the screen without blinking. Not embarrassed, just disappointed that a supposedly professional interview had turned into a childish ambush. The host burst out laughing like he'd just delivered the greatest joke of his career. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Jason Statham, master of emotions." Some clapped. Some cringed. Jason lowered his gaze for a brief moment. Then he calmly said, "If you wanted to talk about my work, I'd be happy to. But making fun of it, that's not really a conversation." The host raised his eyebrows dramatically. "Oh, relax, Jason. It's a joke. You know, humor. Don't take yourself so seriously." Jason looked at him directly for the first time with genuine firmness. "I don't take myself seriously. I take my job seriously. There's a difference." The room froze. The crowd murmured. That line hit hard. But instead of backing off, the host smirked nastily. "My job is to make people laugh. Your job is to, well, I guess to look like you're about to punch someone. We're both doing our jobs, right?" Jason didn't even blink. "That's one way to look at it," he replied quietly. The tension was now undeniable. Even the camera crew shifted uncomfortably. The host smiled smugly, thinking he had won. He didn't realize the audience was no longer amused, they were irritated. The disrespect wasn't funny anymore. It was painful to watch. But what nobody knew, what nobody expected, was that help was already backstage. A giant shadow moved behind the curtain. A name whispered through the crew. "Dwayne Johnson is here." And the moment he walked onto that stage, everything would change. The laughter in the studio slowly died down, but the uncomfortable tension it left behind hung in the air like thick smoke. Jason Statham sat there, calm, composed, but undeniably disappointed. The host leaned back in his chair with the smugness of a man who believed he had total control of the room. But he didn't, and he was about to find out. "Anyway," the host said, waving the tablet in the air, "enough about your acting range." He grinned. "Let's move on to something even better." Jason didn't react. His expression stayed steady, a quiet storm brewing behind his eyes. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the production screen behind them lit up. The host snapped his fingers dramatically. "Roll the next clip." Everyone turned. Jason didn't move. A new video appeared. This time, it wasn't a montage of scenes from Jason's movies. It was a compilation of bloopers, stunts gone wrong, clips of Jason slipping, missing punches, or laughing during intense scenes. All edited to look ridiculous. Cartoon boing! And clown horn sound effects blasted with every fall. The audience laughed again, much louder this time, because the host kept gesturing for them to. Jason watched. Still no reaction. A clip played of Jason trying to jump over a fence during a movie set, and instead getting stuck halfway, dangling awkwardly. The host exploded in laughter, slapping his own knee. "Oh my God! Look at him!" he howled. "The action hero who can't climb a fence." The crowd joined in, though many laughed only because the atmosphere pushed them to. The camera zoomed in on Jason's face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry either. He simply looked disappointed. Not hurt, not offended, just disappointed that a professional interview had turned into a circus. The kind of disappointment that says, "You're better than this." Or at least, "You should be." The host wiped tears from his eyes, still laughing. Jason, mate, tell me you practiced that fence jump after this? Or did they hire a real athlete to do it instead? Jason finally exhaled lightly. Everyone messes up on set, he said softly. We laugh, we reset, we keep working. That's part of filmmaking. Oh, filmmaking, the host mocked dramatically. Right. Big important word. Very fancy. Jason's eyes lifted. It is important, he said quietly. A film is hard work. A team effort. People risk their bodies, their lives sometimes, to entertain the world. For a moment, the audience fell silent. But the host wasn't done humiliating him. He stood up from his seat, walked over to Jason, and bent down so his face was inches away. Tell me something, Jason, he said loudly enough for the microphones to crackle. When you mess up like that, do you blame the script? Or is it just that the tough guy act doesn't always hold up in real life? The audience gasped. Jason slowly lifted his head and met the host's eyes. No anger. No frustration. Just calm certainty. I don't pretend to be tough, Jason said firmly. I train hard. I do my own stunts. I push myself every day. There's no act. Just work. The host threw his hands up mockingly. Oh, ladies and gentlemen. Jason Statham, philosopher, poet, and master of falling flat on his face. He turned to the audience. Come on, people. Can we give Jason a round of applause for surviving that fence? Some laughed. Some clapped. But many were starting to shift in their seats. The disrespect had crossed every line. Jason's face remained unreadable. He wasn't humiliated, not truly. He had lived through tougher hits, harder days, and more intense pressure than this. But the audience saw it. The camera saw it. The world watching at home would see it too. The host walked back to his chair triumphantly like he had just won a battle. He sat, crossed his arms, and leaned back smugly. Jason inhaled slowly, then leaned forward. You know something, he said calmly. I didn't come here for this kind of interview. I came to talk about the movie. To talk about the team behind it. But if you want to make jokes, go ahead. Just don't expect me to join in. The host blinked, slightly thrown off. Oh, are we sensitive today? Jason shook his head. Not sensitive. Just honest. The audience murmured. Some nodded. I respect your job, Jason added. But respect works both ways. That line hit the host like a quiet punch in the chest. His smile faltered. But he forced out a laugh. Well. Didn't know Jason Statham would lecture me on respect today. Maybe that should have been the movie. Jason stayed silent. The silence was more powerful than anything he could have said. But then, a ripple went through the audience. A stir behind the curtains. A shadow, large, powerful, approached. Someone whispered loudly from backstage. He's here. Bring him in. The host didn't notice. Jason did. He turned his head slightly. And then, the crowd erupted as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stepped onto the stage. And in that instant, everything changed. The studio erupted the moment Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stepped onto the stage. It wasn't a normal cheer, it was a thunderstorm. People jumped from their seats, clapping, shouting, whistling. Some even forgot they were on live television. The room transformed instantly. Jason lifted his head, surprised but relieved to see a familiar face. The host, however, froze completely, like a man who suddenly realized he was standing on thin ice. Dwayne walked forward with that signature confidence, broad shoulders, towering frame, smile warm but sharp enough to cut tension in half. He wasn't just entering the stage. He was entering the situation. And everyone could feel it. Look who's here, the host said loudly, trying to regain control. Dwayne Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. The funniest, most charismatic man in Hollywood. Dwayne didn't even look at him at first. He went straight to Jason. Jay, he said in a low voice, pulling Jason up for a hug. Good to see you, brother. Jason smiled, the first genuine smile since the interview began. The audience loved it. The host, still smiling but beginning to sweat, tried to steer the moment. "So, Dwayne, before you join in on teasing Jason here." Dwayne turned suddenly, his expression shifting. He wasn't angry, but he was serious enough to silence the room with just one glance. "Teasing," Dwayne repeated slowly. The host gulped. "Yeah, you know," the host continued weakly, "just having a little fun with Jason. Showing some clips. Making jokes. Nothing harmful." Dwayne stared at him with a calm, unreadable face, the kind of face that makes a grown man rethink all his life choices. He walked closer to the host. Not aggressively. Not threatening. Just firmly. "What kind of jokes?" Dwayne asked. The host laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, it's all in good fun. Jason knows that." "Right, Jason." He looked at Jason desperately. Jason didn't save him. He simply said, "You were crossing the line." The audience hummed in agreement. Dwayne looked at Jason, then at the host. "Show me," he said. The host blinked. "Show you what?" "The clips," Dwayne replied. "Play them." The host froze. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't part of the plan. But the audience started chanting, "Play it! Play it! Play it!" The host's face turned pale, but he had no choice. He signaled the crew reluctantly. The screen lit up again. The montage of bloopers. The clown sound effects. The fence scene with Jason stuck halfway. But this time, nobody laughed. The audience watched silently. Dwayne watched even more silently. When the video ended, the host forced a laugh. "See? Just usual stuff. Funny, right?" Dwayne didn't blink. Instead, he turned toward Jason and asked, "He showed this to you on live TV?" Jason nodded. "Yeah." Dwayne turned to the host again. And then, with perfect timing, he said, "Why?" The host blinked rapidly. "Why would you show something like that?" "To embarrass him," Dwayne asked, his tone calm but heavy with authority. "No. No, no, no," the host insisted, waving his hands. "It's comedy. It's light-hearted. Just fun." Dwayne crossed his arms, a gesture that instantly felt like a verdict. "You know what I find funny?" Dwayne said. "People trying to put others down to look bigger." The audience erupted in applause. The host tried to laugh it off. "Well, I mean, Jason's a big guy. He can handle it." "He can," Dwayne said. "But that doesn't mean he should have to." Jason stood quietly, watching. Dwayne stepped closer to the host, lowering his voice so every camera leaned in. "When a guest comes on your show," he said, "you show them respect. You don't ambush them. You don't humiliate them. Especially someone who's worked as hard as Jason." The studio roared again. The host looked trapped, caught between the cameras, the audience, and the massive force of Dwayne Johnson's honesty. "But hey," Dwayne continued, softening his tone just slightly, "maybe you didn't think it through. Maybe you forgot that Jason is not just an actor. He's a professional. A teammate. A man who does his own stunts. A man who risks his body to entertain millions." Jason looked down modestly. Dwayne put a hand on Jason's shoulder. "This guy has more discipline in one day than most people have in a lifetime." The host swallowed hard. "And you," Dwayne added, turning back to the host, "should be grateful he even came on your show." Silence. A deep, heavy silence filled the entire room. The audience sat motionless, absorbing every word. The host had no comeback. No joke. No smirk. His confidence melted away completely. And in that silence, the power shifted. Jason, who had walked into the interview alone, now stood with one of the most respected men in Hollywood standing at his side. The humiliation stopped. The disrespect ended. And the world watching would remember this moment forever. Because from this point on, the host was no longer in control. Dwayne Johnson was. The tension in the studio had reached its breaking point. Jason Statham sat still, jaw tight, eyes narrowed, trying to maintain composure even as the host kept throwing little jabs disguised as jokes. The crew avoided eye contact. The audience didn't know whether to clap, laugh, or stay quiet. Everyone felt the storm coming. And then, the studio doors opened. A towering figure stepped inside, casually adjusting his leather jacket. His presence alone shifted the whole energy of the room. Without cameras even pointing at him yet, the audience erupted in cheers. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had arrived. The host froze mid-sentence, blinking like he'd seen a ghost. This wasn't part of the plan. Jason looked over and finally, for the first time in the entire interview, allowed himself a small smile. "Sorry I'm late," The Rock said, walking toward Jason with that confident stride only he has. "Traffic was unbelievable. Or maybe—" He paused, looking dead at the host. "Someone forgot to invite me properly." The host laughed nervously, tugging his collar. "Oh, we were just about to bring you out. Great timing." But Dwayne didn't return the smile. Instead, he placed a hand on Jason's shoulder, giving him a reassuring pat. "You good, brother?" he asked softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Jason nodded. "All good. Just answering some interesting questions." The host tried to jump in. Yes. All fun, of course. Jason knows I'm just teasing." Dwayne turned slowly toward the host. "Teasing," he repeated. "Funny. Didn't sound like teasing from the hallway." The audience murmured. The host gulped. Dwayne stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the firm, commanding presence of someone who knew exactly how to control a room. "You know," he said, "there's a difference between interviewing and trying to embarrass someone because it makes you feel big." The host's eyes darted toward the cameras, unsure whether he should cut to commercial or keep faking a smile. Before he could speak, Dwayne continued. "Jason's one of the most hard-working, respectful guys I've ever met. A real pro. And you bring him on here to mock him? To act like you're above him?" The host stammered, "And no. I was just trying to keep things entertaining." Dwayne raised a hand. "Entertaining doesn't mean disrespect." The room exploded in applause. Jason looked down, humbled but grateful. The host, desperate to regain control, let out a forced laugh. "Well, since you're here, Dwayne, why don't we lighten the mood? Maybe share a funny story about Jason messing up a stunt." Dwayne stared at him. "That's your takeaway? After everything we just talked about, you want me to laugh at my friend?" The audience went dead silent. Then The Rock leaned back slightly, crossed his arms, and said, "Let me tell you a real story." The host perked up, expecting something comedic. A few years ago, during a shoot, Jason risked his life, literally, to pull a stuntman out of danger. Didn't wait for instructions, didn't think twice. Just acted. That's who he is. The audience clapped again, louder this time. "And you," Dwayne added, turning back to the host, "sit here trying to make him look like a joke? You should be thanking him for even agreeing to this interview." The host's face turned red. He was running out of places to hide. Jason finally spoke, calmly. "It's all right, mate. This line of work can get to people. Fame, pressure, ratings. Sometimes people forget we're human." That line hit the host harder than anything Dwayne could have said. Jason wasn't angry. He wasn't petty. He was just honest. Dwayne nodded. "See? That's class. That's humility. That's Jason Statham." The audience gave a standing ovation. Cameras captured the moment, the exact second the host realized he had completely lost control of his own show. Trying to save himself, the host forced a trembling smile. "Well, shall we continue with the interview?" Dwayne smirked. "Oh, we'll continue. But this time—" He pointed to the host's chair. "You're not running the show. We are." The studio erupted. Jason leaned back, more relaxed than he had been since the interview started. And for the first time, the host realized the truth. He hadn't humiliated Jason Statham. He had humiliated himself. The studio was electric. Every camera, every microphone, every live feed captured the complete shift in power. Jason Statham sat upright, calm but visibly relieved. Beside him, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson exuded a quiet authority that seemed to make even the host shrink in place. The audience, once unsure, now roared with approval. Cheers, claps, and whistles echoed as the reality became clear. The tables had turned. The host, the man who thought he controlled the room with sarcasm and mockery, was now a spectator in his own show. Dwayne raised a hand, signaling for quiet. The audience obeyed instantly. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. "Let me make one thing clear," Dwayne said, his voice calm but unwavering. "Jason Statham is one of the most hard-working, dedicated, and professional actors in the business. He risks his body every day, gives everything for every role, and treats everyone around him with respect." He paused, letting the words sink in. The audience erupted again, louder this time. The host tried to laugh nervously, but the laughter died quickly as the energy in the room shifted entirely. "You," Dwayne continued, pointing gently but firmly at the host, "think it's funny to humiliate someone in front of millions, to mock someone's work, to treat them like a joke." His voice was steady, controlled, and full of gravity. "It's not funny. It's unprofessional. And it's disrespectful." The host swallowed hard. His usual smugness was gone. His arrogance had evaporated in the face of Dwayne's authority. For the first time, he seemed small. Jason finally spoke, his voice calm and dignified. "I'm not here to escalate this. I came to talk about my work, my team, and the craft I love. But when someone crosses the line, it's important to call it out. Respect works both ways." The audience cheered again, some standing, some clapping. Phones flashed everywhere, recording the moment, knowing the clip would go viral almost instantly. Dwayne nodded at Jason, smiling with genuine pride. "Exactly. That's class. That's integrity. And that's why we have to hold each other accountable." The host, now visibly embarrassed, tried to regain composure. "Well, I guess I got a little carried away. Sorry, Jason. Didn't mean." Dwayne held up a hand. "Save it. Actions speak louder than words. And right now, the lesson is clear. Respect is earned and should never be taken lightly. Especially on live TV." Jason leaned back, a slight smile breaking through for the first time all interview. The crowd roared in approval again. The narrative had shifted completely. The disrespect that began the interview was now a lesson in humility, professionalism, and integrity. The moment wasn't just about Jason. It was about everyone watching, people who had ever been belittled, mocked, or judged unfairly. The clip, now recorded from multiple angles by audience members, cameras, and live feeds, was destined to go viral. Millions would see it, millions would comment, and millions would understand the importance of dignity under pressure. The host sat frozen, realizing that his own behavior had been called out publicly, live, and with overwhelming support for Jason. He had no room to argue, no jokes left to deflect the truth. And in that instant, the world watching knew. Humility wins. Respect matters. Courage is timeless. Jason Statham had endured the humiliation with grace. Dwayne Johnson had stepped in with authority and justice. And the host had learned a lesson he would never forget. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, the studio was buzzing like never before. The energy that had shifted during the interview didn't fade. It radiated outward, spilling into the hallways, the streets outside, and across social media in real time. Clips of the confrontation, Dwayne Johnson's intervention, and Jason Statham's composed responses were being uploaded by audience members before the crew even had a chance to breathe. Within minutes, the hashtags were trending worldwide. #RespectJason, #TheRockStrikesBack, and #HumilityWins. Millions of people watched, shared, and commented, praising Jason for his poise, Dwayne for stepping in, and calling out the host for his arrogance. The video exploded on every major platform, from YouTube to TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. The host, once smug and in control, suddenly faced an overwhelming backlash. Critics dissected his behavior, commentators wrote think pieces on professionalism, and fans flooded the studio's social media accounts demanding an apology. In just a few hours, the tables had turned completely. The mocker became the mocked. Jason Statham, however, didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His dignity had spoken louder than any words ever could. In interviews after the fact, he expressed gratitude for the support but remained humble, shifting the focus to teamwork, hard work, and the importance of respect in every field. Dwayne Johnson, too, handled the aftermath with characteristic grace. He reminded the public that true strength wasn't about physical power or popularity. It was about standing up for what's right, protecting friends, and speaking truth when it matters most. Fans celebrated him not just as a celebrity, but as a role model, a hero for fairness and integrity. The viral footage inspired countless viewers. Many commented that they had experienced similar humiliations in their own lives, whether at work, school, or in public, and Jason's example gave them courage to respond with composure rather than anger. Others praised Dwayne for demonstrating that supporting a friend publicly can make a world of difference. Even the studio's network issued a public statement acknowledging the host's behavior and promising that future interviews would maintain a professional, respectful environment. The host himself released a brief apology, which, although necessary, paled in comparison to the viral lesson of the interview: respect matters. In the end, the incident became more than just a viral story. It became a symbol that dignity under pressure, humility in the face of mockery, and standing up for what's right can resonate globally. Millions of viewers learned an unforgettable lesson, all in a single live interview. Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson's handling of the moment proved that class, integrity, and courage will always outshine arrogance, and the world responded accordingly. Final call to action. If you believe respect and integrity matter more than mockery and arrogance, type respect in the comments, share this story with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more inspiring and unforgettable moments like this one.